So today we're going to do the very thrilling, for Tom, installing Windows is probably not going to be very thrilling. There are multiple ways to install the software. Yesterday you mounted last day we had class, you mounted the ISO, the CD, the DVD, and you went through the click next stuff, right? Not really all that big a deal. What if you were installing Windows on 400 computers with click next? How long is it going to take you? There are other ways to do that. What if the company has software that it uses that it wants to be there soon as the installs are done? What if you got to do the click next on 400 computers and then you got to install 8 or 12 or 14 pieces of software? You can have those. We can install those on a machine and then create an image and use that image to install the rest of the machines that we use. And that's what this installing section is about, not to put the CD, DVD in and click next like everybody can do. Anybody can do this, although there's a little bit of activity that you have to do. And if it was that easy, why do they need you? You ever think about that? I had somebody one time say, boy, I wish that Windows would just troubleshoot itself. Well, that would be really good, but then why do they need you? So these tools are the things that you need to take with you, how you do these things, what you need to do to the image. They made a really cool image here one time using NT 4.0, except they forgot to run sysprep, and that'll be a part of this, which strips all the security out, and we had a whole bunch of computers with the same name, which wasn't so very good. Because Windows gets really upset, yells at you, doesn't it, if you get computers with the same name. And you see that sometimes the NetBIOS names are the same on the virtual machines. Because you know why? Because they all are the same name. They all start as the same machine. So the objectives describe the deployment enhancements in Windows 7. Choose a method for installation, and it may be, if you only got one machine, you may use the DVD, mounted ISO. You may use a bootable flash drive, number of different ways to do that. You may use a network share. You may use a Windows deployment server, which we'll talk about at the end and go through the process of how to do one of those. You'll install one and load the image in the server class, but just so you know what it is and how it works. It is really painfully slow in virtual machines, I'll tell you that. Choose a type of installation. Use the Windows Easy Transfer. Has anybody used the Windows Easy Transfer? Nope. It actually works pretty well. Do you know what it does? See, we'll do the whole lecture here in the objectives. Windows Easy Transfer takes your profile from your XP machine where you have all the configurations and all your favorites and all that other stuff that you hate to lose whenever you do a fresh install. And any configurations, like you say, you got Microsoft Office installed on it, and you've got some specific configurations, like where your documents folder is and things like that. What it does is takes the profile, saves it to a separate location, and then when you get Windows 7 installed, you upload this, and it gives you all of that stuff back. They have an activity to do that, and then they have you do the sysprep and strip everything out. If you'll save this, because you do the Easy Transfer one first to make the profile, if you'll save that someplace where you can get it after you get sysprep done, and you run it, it'll put all your configurations that you had back in, probably except for the background. So save that, and the lab sheet says to save that. Perform an unattended installation of Windows 7. Say that again.
When you do an Easy Transfer, does it override, let's say if you put data onto...
Well, when you use Windows Easy Transfer, you're not going to install Windows 7, make 3 months worth of configuration changes and say, oh, by the way, now I need to do that. Generally, what you're going to do is transfer it from the machine right after you do the install. and then you make the configurations and it'll be additive. Yes, it will overwrite the profile. You know, what you're going to do, when I did one, I took it from my wife's Mary, so it took the profile Mary and put it in here, and then when I logged on with Mary, guess what? It had the same password. It actually had everything, the same background, all the shortcuts, all the Office configurations and all that stuff was there, which made the transfer, the migration easier, because remember, you don't have a direct path upgrade from Windows XP to Windows 7. If you want to upgrade, you got to go through Windows Vista. You can go from XP to Vista to 7 if you want. You don't have to license them, as you know, because you can put Vista on for 15 minutes and it doesn't care, or 30 minutes, or whatever it takes to do the upgrade.
Can you upgrade from Windows XP SP3 to 7?
No, you cannot upgrade from Windows XP to Windows 7.
I thought it was a certain option.
Nope, you cannot upgrade from Windows XP to Windows 7. You can upgrade from Windows XP to Windows Vista. And you can upgrade from Windows Vista to Windows 7. But to go from XP to 7, we're going to do a migration.
Or from the operating system, DOS.
No, from DOS, you've got to have Windows. You have to go back if you want to know the migrations or what you can upgrade from to. You can upgrade from, let's see if I can get this, from NT 3.11 to 95, from 95 to 98, from 98 to Windows 2000, from Windows 2000 to Windows XP, from Windows XP to Windows NT, or Windows Vista, and from Windows Vista to Windows 7. Does that sound about right? And then you'll probably have a system that won't work. The preferred method is always to do a fresh install, because you're not taking any of the problems from one to the other. If you do upgrades, and a lot of people do upgrades, see it all the time, something's not working, if I upgrade, I'll fix it. The only thing you do is upgrade the problem. Having said that, that's not 100% true. Sometimes it will fix it, but most of the time what you do is you just take the problem from one version to the next version of Windows. An unattended install, an attended installation, which you've already done, an unattended installation, we're going to talk about it and we'll look at how to do it. We can do one. I don't see any real future with the amount of time it takes once you've done an install. You know that. All an unattended install means is you make an answer file. All those questions that you answer, like what's your time zone and what's the computer name, we just make an XML file with the tools that are available and tell Windows to use that to answer the questions. That's what an unattended install is. Windows Deployment Services, which I will show you, does that automatically. It has some presets. You just boot to it, start it up, go, and then when you get done, when you log on, it does some activities for you. Use and manage the Windows Imaging Format Image Files, WIM files, and you're going to hear WIM files. You're going to hear that term a lot. Windows Imaging Format WIM files, which have the images inside it. When we start these things, the WIM file itself has the installation file. It's got to have a boot file and an installation file. You have to have one of each in order to start these things. They're separate. The installation file is which version, which Windows 7 you're going to use, from Starter to Enterprise to Ultimate. Design improvements, tool and technology improvements, all those are true. The Windows Easy Transfer is not new with Windows 7. You could use it also, actually you could use it in Windows XP, couldn't you? It just wasn't as obvious in XP. And it's really handy when you want to do a fresh install and you don't want to start over with all those configuration changes. Now, once you get there, if you transfer all of your Windows, your Word and all your Office configurations, you have to reinstall the applications. Once you reinstall the applications, then the configurations are there. Modularization behind the scenes, simplified addition of drivers, simplified development of service pack, simplified implementation of multiple languages. And what this really is saying behind the scenes in Windows 7 benefits, when we make an image, there actually is a tool that you can mount the image and put updates in it without having to go through and update every machine that once you install. Because once you did this install, the machines had Service Pack 2, and I know they started right in wanting to update stuff, right? Did they not? What if you wanted to have the machines installed with the updates already in them? You can mount the image, put the updates into it before you actually do the install. So that's one of the advantages there. You could do that with XP too. They call it slipstreaming. You could slipstream an update in a service pack into the image file. It wasn't an image file, but into the image that you made. It was an image actually. Windows imaging format is done from the WIM file itself. The WIM file has the images for each version of Windows 7 in it. The commercial ones do. I think the ones that we get, and I haven't looked at the professional that gets downloaded from the MSD and AA side, I know they changed the name. But I expected it only has professional in it. A commercial variant will have all of them in it. So you pick whichever one that you want, whichever one you have a license for. The hazard here is if you have a license for, like, Home, Windows Home Premium or Home Basic, and you try to install Enterprise, it's not going to work. It's going to cause a real mess with the whole situation. Add and remove components directly from the image file, and those components also include drivers. You can put them specifically in there. That sometimes happens too. We used to, and we did PXE installs. We had this thing set up on, at the time it was called a RIS server, remote installation server. And you could boot the Dell computers to the PXE because that was a standard. And you would install, and this was XP, install XP, and when you got done, your NIC didn't work. Well, you could go download the driver, except your NIC didn't work. Or you could put the driver in the image file that you were using, and it would automatically install that. Now, this is not just a matter of copying these things, and you've got to do some configurations in the answer files. But the process of doing these things, add the updates directly, add and remove files directly from the image file. Single image from multiple hardware platforms. This is a big deal. What does that really mean? We talked, or didn't talk, I got 2 Windows classes, about this thing called the Hardware Compatibility List, the HCL, or the Hardware Abstraction Layer. Have you heard? You guys will talk about that, or have talked about that, or will talk about that in the A+ class. Have you talked about how the Hardware Abstraction Layer is hardware-specific drivers? And it basically revolves around the BIOS, which means that if you did an image, made an image from one, and tried to install that image on another one, you get the very famous blue screen of death. This allows you to be a little bit more flexible. You don't have to have an image for every motherboard, basically. And we'll say motherboard because generally we go motherboard to motherboard. We're talking about the changing the BIOS, right? Different BIOS on different motherboards. Although that's not entirely true. But you can rebuild that thing as you go through multiple hardware platforms. And that's a big deal if you have multiples. We used to do images, and we found out we had like 8 different hardware platforms. You had to have 8 different images, and then when you went to install it, you had to know which one you were on so that you install the correct one. Otherwise, it just didn't work. Single image file for multiple images with varying configurations, we can have those. That means that you could have, if in a business you had the dedicated desktops, and they usually call those your gold standard. We got all of our applications on it. Well, in this place, we might have a different desktop for students, and a different desktop for faculty, and a different desktop for administrators because you want different applications on it. We can do that. and have those things together in a single WIM file, multiple images there. XML-based answer files, and Windows has gone almost exclusively to XML files to have configurations in them. XML files can be changed with a text editor. You can go out and there are XML editors too, but you can use it with Notepad. It's just a little bit uglier, I guess, when you open it. Windows System Image Manager, create and edit the answer files. Remember, the answer files are what we're going to use in order to do an unattended install. So you use this thing, and these are all going to be part of the WAIK kit, which they tell you to download in the labs. It's already there if you'll go mount it. There's one called WAIK. You can it's pretty big, so you probably don't want to download it onto your virtual machine. It takes a long time. It's already there. It's already been downloaded for you. You've got to do the install. There's nothing really magic about downloading except tell it to download it, to wait for it. Installation scripts used to automate the installation tasks, perform the same way each time. Scripts, answer files, we're talking similar processes here. Scripting is something that, you guys haven't had a scripting class yet, you'll get one. Scripting is something that really makes things much quicker in Windows because, again, you can sit down if you've got 200 or 300 machines to do. It's a little hard to sit down at every one of them and get it done in an afternoon or even over a weekend. How'd you like to spend your weekend installing Windows on 300 computers? Because you know what? They don't like you to take the business down while you're doing stuff. That's why we have such odd hours sometimes. Or you can do the scripting and the automated processing in order to do that. What we used to do, I know I digress a lot, when we wanted to install an application like Microsoft Office, we'd create a policy, new term, and we'll do those in the server class. We'd create a policy to install Windows 7, go turn all the computers off, turn them all back on. If you did that, and we didn't used to have afternoon classes, if you did like on a Friday afternoon, turn them all off at 1 o'clock, turn them all back on, by the time you got ready to leave, you'd have Windows Office installed on all your computers. Or you could sit down at all 250 of them, which you couldn't do in an afternoon, I don't think. For those of you who have tried those things, going from one to the other, it just goes on and on and on. File and registry redirection information to the Windows folder in restricted parts of the registry. And you probably experienced some of this stuff. One of the biggest ones to me is, you ever try to save something to the root of C on these machines? Says you can't do it. You can create a folder and save it in the folder, but you can't save it to the root. It's really, to me, it's just kind of an oddity. Tricks the application into running without requiring the user to have elevated privileges. Requests are redirected to a virtual Windows folder or a virtual registry. So it allows, what this is saying, it allows temporary changes without making permanent changes to the registry while you're running the machine. The Application Compatibility Toolkit, identify which applications are compatible. Not such a big deal if you're using the standards like we do. Well, we use Microsoft Office and a few other applications around here. You guys use Packet Tracer and Wireshark, things like that. No real compatibility issues, but companies that have proprietary software, there may be compatibility issues. One of the things that you should be able to do is run this before, or Windows actually will tell you what's not going to work when you get done, so that you can look at those things. The User State Migration Tool, we talked about the Easy Transfer. The Easy Transfer is like for a few of them. User State Migration Tool does the same thing as the Easy Transfer, but on a larger scale. It can be scripted so that you can do a whole group, a whole company, I'll say a whole company, a whole work group maybe, do a whole room of machines at the same time. I don't know that you would want to do all of Norfolk Southern at once, which is what he's doing. But this is what he's going to use as the User State Migration Tool. And that's one of the questions they ask him on his interview. What is it and how do you use it? Once you get past HR, they do ask you technical questions on these interviews. ImageX is the free tool that allows you to create images. It's Windows tool. Yes, there are other imaging softwares that a lot of people use. A lot of people use Norton Ghost to create the images and distribute the images. They'll all work. ImageX is free, integrates very well once you learn how to use it. Since you don't have to pay for it, probably as good as any, because you're not going to be doing, probably not going to be doing imaging every day. You might be. Some places do. But it's part of the Windows Automated Installation Kit, the WAIK. Again, the one that they'll tell you to download, but it's already there if you'll just mount it. Go the same process that you went through yesterday to the CD/DVD that you went through to mount the ISO for the Windows 7 installation. The Windows System Image Manager for configuring unattended installs, creating the distribution shares. This is all part of the WAIK. They'll take you through some of those. Windows PE pre-execution is what the PE stands for. Is a CD that you make that's bootable that then will allow you to install your images from there. It can be used for installing, troubleshooting, and repairing Windows. If it won't start, you may want to go into the Windows PE, and then they're going to have another one called the Windows RE, the recovery environment, the pre-execution environment. They're both pre-execution environments. Which tools they have on them, it depends on what you can do with these things. It includes networking components. That means that we could boot to that thing and then get to a network share if we shared the images at some remote location. The DISM deployment, these are all really, see, you didn't know this was going to be an alphabet soup again, did you? DISM, deployment, imaging, servicing, and management. This is the one that you can mount the image and make changes to it and save changes to the image if you want to add stuff to it once it's been made and you say, oh, we need to put an update in, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. You use this in order to do that. Offline servicing of the WIM images themselves. Windows Deployment Services, WDS, runs on a server. It used to be called the RIS Server Remote Installation Server. 2003 Service Pack 3, I think, changed it, which really shocked a lot of people. Whenever they put that on, all of a sudden the RIS servers didn't work anymore. But it allows you to do a network install of these things, which means that we're going to use the PXE environment, right, the pre-execution environment. New term, old term, don't care term. What does that mean, PXE? It means you boot to the NIC. And you get an IP address from the DHCP server, and if you get it from the right DHCP server and all of that, it's going to show you a list of installs that you can use, and then you install from the network. Changing this WDS server is it allows multicasting, which means that if a couple of you booted and started the install, and then somebody came in 20 minutes later and booted and started the install, the one that came in 20 minutes later would start picking up the download at that point, and then when it went back to the beginning, you would finish up what's going on. So you don't have to have the individual connection to every machine. You can use a multicast. Makes it a little bit more efficient that way. Now that's a server configuration. We'll do that later on. Most common installation methods, the one you did yesterday, the distribution share image-based installation. I don't know that that's necessarily true. This is the world according to Microsoft and Course Technologies. Which way would you do a large-scale installation?
Either distribution or image-based.
Distribution or image-based. I would use the distribution server. What I would probably do if I had specific applications, make my own image, upload my own image into the WDS server. That means I've got a Windows server running Active Directory somewhere, but that's the topic of another class. And then all I got to do is go sit down and boot the machines to the NIC and come back when it's done. That's a lot easier way to do it, isn't it? So, and it'll even name itself. It'll give it a password. It'll do a whole bunch of stuff. It may not name it the way you want it, but it will do those things. Distribution share installation means that we've shared something across the network, and we're going to have something to boot to in order to find that. Image-based installation, just like John was talking about, we create our own image with our own applications on it. And I think probably combine these things in order to do that. Since this is how we're going to make up some of those slides. They're going to go through each of these things. We've been there, done that, I think, on those. DVD installation. Got that one? Put the DVD in. Click, click. Kind of made a point that if you're going to do 300 machines, you're probably not going to want to do it that way because you'd rather do something on Saturday and Sunday than probably several Saturdays and Sundays instead of clicking the next button 6,000 times. Degree of customization is low. We can't go ahead. We wouldn't have all of the things that we needed in it. Distribution share, a little bit better, but we still got to boot it to a WinPE. We still got to have a CD or a flash drive or something in order to boot the machine that has the networking components running so that we can get to that network share. So is it or isn't it? Maybe not the best way to do it. Speed distribution of the share varies. How fast is the network? How much traffic are you putting on the network? How fast are your routers and switches? How much can you get into any location at any one time? We used to do these in room 108, and one of the reasons we're in 112 is 108 would only support, for whatever reason, and I suspect it's because the wires go across one of these lights here. We do like 2 computers at a time, but now we use the virtual machines, and then we get hung up with the disk activity. Level of customization for the distribution share is higher than the DVD because we can create our own images with ImageX. Image-based, you got to create the customized image, and in a lot of cases in the network share, you're probably going to do that anyway, aren't you? Wouldn't you want to? But ImageX, placing the distribution share using the WISM tool. Computer's got to be booted into the PE environment. Again, we're going to sit down and boot them with a piece of removable media in order to do that. Clean installation and upgrade installation. We kind of talked about that. Clean installation is what you did, right? Clean installation means we'll wipe out everything and start over. Upgrade installation, we can only upgrade from Vista. The other one will be called a migration. We can migrate from Windows XP, which means that you save all the configuration. Basically, you save the profile, put Windows 7 on it, and import the profile into Windows 7. And it will take all of that information with you. Most are clean. New computer always has a clean installation, and most people recommend that you do a clean installation. Personally, I prefer the upgrade because all of my applications are already there. And that's the difference. Clean installation is nothing there. You got to reinstall all your applications. Often prefer, and I would say often, maybe almost always. Often is probably not a strong enough word for what they want to do. Around here, if we do something, what they typically do is wipe it out, start over, because Windows never makes any little niggling changes to slow it down or to have little faults, right? The clean install is the best way to go in these things. In-place migration, migrate the user settings, files, and applications that exist in the previous operating system. The migration itself, to me, and these are my words, you see what their words are, not really an upgrade, because you still got to reinstall all the applications that were on it. What this is, what they're describing here, is in fact a migration, where you migrate the user settings from one machine to the other. You save it, and you then import them into the machine. And it depends on you. They've got a number of different ways to do it. If you're going to put the operating system on the same hard drive, please be sure that you store these settings on a something that's outside the computer, because when you format it, they'll be gone away if you save them on the hard drive. Be sure you've got copies of those things. I know, so that's really silly. You don't know how many silly mistakes we all make. It's like, oh yeah, I really should have saved that before I did that. Anybody ever done that other than me? Only Windows Vista Service Pack 1 can be upgraded to Windows 7. They made some changes that we don't see under the hood to allow the upgrade. So Vista can upgrade XP put the service pack on it, and then you can upgrade it to Windows 7 if you want to go that path. That's the only way to actually get there. Time save, user settings, migration, installing software to me would be the thing that would be the best there. Stores the settings that are stored in the C:, users directory. We changed directories when we went from XP to Vista and 7, right? From documents and settings to C:/users. That's where everything is stored. And by the way, when you do one of these things, it's going to save everything. Anybody ever see old Windows, right? And that's what they call C:/old Windows. If you look in there, they get a whole bunch of stuff. If you say, oh, I forgot something, that's probably where it's going to be. You can get stuff out of that folder. When you get done with it, it's going to be really big. When you get done with it, you probably should delete it to get your disk space back. But you're going to have something there. Profiles are automatically upgraded when we do these things. The Windows Easy Transfer and User State Migration tool we mentioned earlier, that's what's going to take the profile settings from one to the other. Dual boot installations and virtualizations, we've talked a little bit about that. What does dual boot mean?
Two separate operating systems.
Two separate operating systems. When you start up, you get a choice. Do you want to boot to? And if you want to see what happens, look at this machine, turn it off and turn it back on. It's dual boots with Windows 7 and Windows 8. Just so you see what you see. You can pick the operating system and load whichever operating system that you pick. If we had, Windows 7 Enterprise, we could create a dual boot situation with a virtual hard drive, if you remember back to Tuesday. So that we didn't actually have to create a new partition on our physical media, on our C drive, two partitions, one for 7 and one for 8, or one for 7, one for 8, whatever. But we could create a virtual hard drive, and it would boot to it. Now, the virtual hard drive is still going to take storage space on the physical hard drive. Bootloader, got to support it. The basic rule for dual booting, multi-booting, any Windows system is install the oldest operating system first. If you want XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, XP goes on first, then Windows 7, then Windows 8. If you're going to install Linux, and I'll pick on Sharon here, you're going to need to put Windows on first, right?
We put Windows on first.
Put Windows on first. That's really the only way it's going to work, because it puts a boot manager in. First you pick which system you want. Now, he had a problem because you were using dynamic disk, right?
Yeah, do not do it.
If you're going to do it, don't upgrade your disk from basic to dynamic, because Linux doesn't like dynamic disk. That's kind of a Windows thing. We'll do that. We'll talk about that. You'll do that.
Your computer will be less than pleased.
You'll do that only with Linux. You'll do that when we do the disk portion of the course. What those are. Required for two purposes: keep unsupported applications, keep configuration data separate. If you got a good reason to dual boot, okay. If you don't got a good reason, why? All it does is take disk space. I used to have a machine that had 3 operating systems on it, and I always had the wrong one selected. And I turned the computer on, walk away, and come back, and I'm in the wrong operating system, so now I got to start over every time. But you can do that. You can pick which one's going to boot first. But I was good. It was different classes, different operating systems. I was always one behind. But there are some reasons to dual boot. There are some reasons to not dual boot. If you got the XP, the compatibility, remember you've got XP mode, or you may just run a virtual machine. If you don't have one of the versions that supports the XP component of it, you can run it in a virtual machine. Main requirement: disk partition separate from the other operating systems. So you do really need, in this day and time, a separate partition for each of the operating systems if you're going to dual boot them. Snapshots, virtualization, snapshots, and undo disks. Undo disks are really kind of cool. I was beating myself silly one time trying to do an upgrade, and this wouldn't work, or that wouldn't work, or you had to do this, or you had to do that, and then you had to go back. What you can do with the undo disks and the snapshots, is you take a picture, you freeze everything at a moment in time, and you go do the stuff. And if it works, then you apply the undo disk. If it doesn't work, you undo it and go back and start over. So that's kind of a handy thing to be able to do in system. It's kind of like a system restore point, except it actually does all of the disk activity, including things that you save on the disk. Restore point's a good way to get rid of a virus, right? You ever think about that? I got a virus and I got a restore point. Go back before you had the virus. It won't start. What about you forgot your password? Go back to before you changed it with the restore point. So they are handy at sometimes, but this is a little bit, and the undo disk is really kind of a handy thing to have. Particularly if you're trying stuff out. This didn't work. Well, I don't want to redo the machine every time or copy it, keep multiple copies. Just try it out with the undo disks activated. It doesn't work, throw it away. And you'll go back to that start point. Snapshots do the same thing in Hyper-V. Easy transfer, you're going to use that. It's a graphical tool, and we've already kind of addressed that one, right? What did it do? What did Windows Easy Transfer do? Profiles from one to the other. You save it, and then you can export it and import it. And they got an activity for you to do that. When you do this activity, you'll do it before you do the one where you wipe out the profile. Save it to where you can get it. That way, when you get it redone, all you got to do is say, hey, this is my new computer, and import the profile, and all your stuff comes back. Kind of a handier way to do it than redoing all that stuff. And it shows you that it does actually work. I was going to go, you've got an activity to do this with. Copy the Easy Transfer. Copy it someplace. When you get the profile, put it someplace where you know where it is. If you're going to wipe out the disk, put it someplace that you know where it is. It's not on that disk, so that you actually have these things. And these are the where you're going to store it. You can network share Windows. USB. You actually can save it onto the hard drive that you're on when you do these things. XP or Vista, you went to Easy Transfer, and again, this allows you to do the transfer of the profile. If we transfer the profile, are we going to be doing an upgrade?
No.
Trying to get this term. Migration is really what you're going to be doing. A true upgrade can only be done from Vista Service Pack 1. The options, and this is nothing really matter. Usually, the Easy Transfer cable. That means that you got to go out and buy a cable. Transfer it directly to a network connection. Put it on an external hard drive, flash drive, whatever else that you have available in order to store it before you do it. And then they said that's how you're going to get this thing here to there. Select what to transfer. When you get into user accounts, all user accounts, a single user account, advanced options, and again, when you do the activity, take a look at what you can transfer. Because if you take a Microsoft's test, they're going to want to know. They're going to want you to know about that. They're usually hit the stuff that's new particularly hard when you take those. And you guys that have taken the CompTIA test, they're 100 questions, right? Microsoft tests are usually about 50 questions. I think 52 is what they say on some of them now, but they're usually around 50 questions. That's just what these things are going to be. The steps, attended installs, and you're going to see all those steps when you go through. Attended install, again, that's what you did. You answered the questions, right? What time zone are you in? What do you want to name the computer? They don't ask very many anymore. All you had to create the partition, right? How'd you create a partition? An unattended install, we're going to create an answer file that will answer all of those questions for us. You enter the information only from the very beginning and to the end of the installation. Product activation. This will happen automatically. I think that we've installed too many times for the license that we have. Keep in mind that for Windows 7, you can actually use it for up to 6 months without licensing it or activating it. If you want to extend it, the command is, you ready? slmgr-rearm. slmgr, that's the license manager, -rearm, R-E-A-R-M. And that will renew it for another 60 days, I think is what it is. The initial install is good for 30 days. So the ones that you did, we're going to go just a little bit over the 30 days in the class, right? So you may need to rearm it. If you forget it, we can do it when we get there. It's not a big... How can you tell if one has run out of license? Other than it yells at you and it's supposed to be limited, it turns the desktop black. If you use a black desktop, you won't know. If you use blue or something like that for your solid color, if it turns black, then maybe I need to rearm this thing. And then it goes back okay for a while. But you can go up to 6 months on these things without licensing them. And if you need to activate it, change the product key down here. Down here is activate now. 9 days. I think yours will probably say something like 3 days till activation. It'll probably tell you it couldn't activate. Don't worry, because it's still going to be good for that amount of time. It's just not activated. And if you want to activate it now, you click down here, activate now. Unattended install, the entire process automated, using an answer file, the XML file that we talked about. Answer files used to be, to me, much simpler than they are today. But you still got to go through the process, and they're going to take you through the process of how you would do one of those things. There's an awful lot more things that you can configure in the answer file than you used to be able to. So it is more in-depth, which means that it's going to be a little more complicated than it has been in the past. It is an XML file, which is, again, just a text file. You can edit an XML file with a text editor. Specify the name of the answer file. I'll set up to name it automatically. Use the /unattend switch when you run the setup to tell it that you're using an answer file, that you're doing an unattended installation. Otherwise, we'll try to do an attended install. Answer files, cache. This is where they can be used. You're going to make one of those. The configuration passes in the answer files. This is here. Windows tends to go a little bit beyond the scope of any course, and I think this one is a little bit beyond the scope of Windows 7. This is more of a server issue because that's where you're actually going to be using these things. But the different passes that happen when you actually do the installation are here, and this is where it would get the answer files from. The OOBE system down here is that's out-of-box experience, that you make an image and when you install it, just like you put the DVD in. Sir?
That's pretty funny to me.
Out-of-box experience, yeah, that's what it is. OOBE. The phases, to start, we're going to partition, specify which image we're going to use, the credentials for accessing the Windows image. If we do a WDS server, you have to be able to log on to them, and if you authorize people in Active Directory, and again, these are one of those a little bit beyond how you're going to set that up. What you want to know is, yes, I can log on and install it. This is the process. That's what this one is about. But you can configure it to limit or allow lots of people to do that. The offline servicing, I kind of talked about. Faster installation, enhanced security. Faster installation because you don't have to do the upgrades after you get done with the installation. See, user out-of-box experience. Portion of the installation where the users ask for information after the second boot, like what's the name? You name your computer, Mary's PC or whatever else in these systems. SysPrep is a tool that's been around a long time, system preparation. What it does is strips out all of the security information, the name, the security identifier, and all that other good stuff. So that you don't wind up with what I told you about what we wound up with NT 4.0, which was 50 computers with the same name and the same computer number and the same everything. What this does is take those out and you rename the machine when you restart it. They're going to have you do a SysPrep lab and you'll have to rename it. And when you get done with the SysPrep lab and you get it all restarted, if you have saved your Windows Easy Transfer file, you can bring it right back into your machine and you'll get back to where you were. But the SysPrep and the tests that I've taken, they really ask that question a lot, because if you don't take the security out, if you don't use SysPrep, you're going to have images that are going to be really odd forever, because it's all based upon the SIDS. The SIDS really what it's based on. The WISM, WSIM, Windows System Image Manager, create the answer files, and again, they're going to take you through a number of these activities with the automated installation kit. Those are that step by step. But the reason I'm going through these, when you go through the activities, you'll do all of those things, and to me, it's a lot easier to do them than me to put you further asleep. SysPrep been around. It has been around for a long time. The overall process: install Windows, put your applications on it, SysPrep it, use your SysPrep, and when you do SysPrep, it'll ask if you want to reboot or shut it down. If you're going to save everything, you're going to shut it down, then you're going to boot with your Windows PE disk, run ImageX, capture the image someplace. It can be on a network share, it can be on that hard drive on that machine. And then once you get ready to install the image, you can either import it into a deployment server, or you can use a Windows PE disk in order to do it one machine at a time when you go through those things. Prepares the workstation, strips out all the workstation specific information when you do those things. And you get a choice of what you want to do here, and I think they probably have you pick the out-of-box experience, because what they want you to do to see what happens, you'll go through the whole renaming process. What they have you do is run SysPrep on your machine and restart it. When you do that, it's going to come up and it doesn't have anything. Just remember, it's like starting Windows up for the very first time. You have to name it and all that other good stuff. When you get done, since you would have saved your Windows Easy Transfer file, start Windows Easy Transfer and say, this is my new computer, and use that file to put all the information that you've done up to that point back into the system. These, again, are the steps, and they've got the steps in the activities. I don't see a whole lot of future in just reading those to you. The command line options, and they're in there also. ImageX is used to create an image file, create a WIM file. Single file, WIM file can hold multiple images. One of the things that you do have to do with ImageX is when you look at the step sequence, you have to give a description of it. And the reason you need to give a description of it is so that when you go to use the things, the description will tell you what that file is. But they're going to take you through it also. The syntax, and again, they'll give you the syntax. ImageX, capture image, da-da-da-da-da-da. Follow the steps in the lab, and it should work. It'll take you through, and they're going to have you image part of your disk, not your whole disk. You can image your whole disk if you want. If you really want to go through the whole process, put some stuff on it, image it, and we'll make a WinPE disk and boot it up, install it on a hard drive, and see what happens, see if it actually does work. It does work. Image maintenance pre-configured with the applications. Apply the software upgrades again. Some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff can be done offline. And when we say that can be done offline, it's like a lot of these things we say, it's like, oh yeah, we just go click, click. It's not always that easy. Sometimes there are multiple steps in doing these things. Frequently there are multiple steps. Can't be running while the image is being taken or applied, and that's what the Windows PE, the pre-execution environment's about. We'll boot to it, and then it actually transfers. It actually transfers the image from the storage location to the hard drive itself. All of the things, and again, they're going to have you make one of these. All of these steps are in there. The copy PE command to create the structure, the copy PE WIM, ISO, the source is the boot WIM. You have to have a boot WIM, which is where the boot files are. You're going to, in these WIMs, you're going to have two file types. You're going to have a boot file, which gets the operating system going, and an installation file, which you pick which version of Windows 7 from the starter to the ultimate. So, two different ones here. We need the boot WIM because what we're going to do after we get it booted is move the installation file onto the system. Each of these steps do different things. Copy the image x.exe and other desired files to the ISO folder, the OSCDIMGexe to create, and you have to have this. This is the file that actually creates the ISO file. So we go through that, and then we don't have to actually extract it to a CD DVD because we can mount the ISOs in a system. So I can do 64 slides in about 60 minutes, huh? A number of those reasons I skipped over them, you're going to do those activities. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good to read you the steps until you actually sit down and do the steps, I think. So, how many different ways are there to install Windows 7? So what are some of them? One that you did is clean install. Yeah, we can do a clean install or an upgrade or a migration. What about the media? What kind of media can we do it with? Where can we put the media? Flash drive, hard drive, DVD, CD. We can do attended installs or unattended installs. See how much smarter you guys are now? Attended installs or unattended installs. These are the kinds of things when I talked about on Tuesday when we start doing these things. Don't think about it, this is my home version. If I'm going to do it at home, I'm going to take the DVD, stick it in the tray, and let it go. If I'm going to do 300 machines, I'm probably not going to do it that way. I probably want to use some other process. I'm probably going to want answer files. If I'm going to do a migration at home, which I have done and it works very well, I'm going to use the Windows Easy Transfer because I'm only doing one machine. If I'm going to do it in a large scale, guys telling me about Norfolk Southern, I'm probably going to use Utrastate Migration Tool because I can do more than one at a time. So there are a lot of different ways to do that. What the lab activities for this chapter are for are actually exposing you to these tools. Questions? We'll take a break. Probably ready for a break. I see a lot of eyes glazing over, and I don't blame you. But you ready for a break? Yeah. Take a break.